I haven't seen a single stand-up clip where they're actually funny. It's just dunking on randoms in the audience. I mean, it's a kind of entertainment, right? You can do bits, you can do comedy. Sometimes it's just like, you know, here's a guy we're going to dunk on. That's fine. That's an acceptable... I mean, it is a kind of comedy. Stand-up is in a weird spot because old money avenues are basically closed. I feel like stand-up is in a weird spot also because it's illegal to be funny now. I mean it. Like, you couldn't do George Carlin nowadays. You couldn't do George Carlin nowadays. And the reason for that is because the quality of the bits would be hampered by the fact that any real observational comedy that you did, that with even a little bit of a political bent, would be immediately met with being categorized into the, oh, you're anti-Trump, you're in the partisan left thing. You can't be a comedian and be right-wing because comedy is... People say comedy is about punching up, not punching down. That's not true. You can punch down and make it funny. You can do a lot of bad things and make it funny. It's not about moral virtue. But comedy requires introspection, obviously. It's a form of communication. And right-wing comedians are fundamentally uninterested in the level of introspection that you would need to make jokes out of the subject that they're talking about. They use it as a vessel for demeaning people, which, again, can be fine, but they don't do it in a funny way. It's just that. Like, it's just, they're just plain not funny. It's not like a, you can't be funny while being racist. Yeah, you can. They just aren't. Racists are almost never funny. It very rarely are they funny because they get too racist in the middle of the race joke to be funny with it. That's why all the funny race jokes are from anti-racists. It's not that you theoretically couldn't be funny and racist. It's that in the middle of the joke, their synapses misfire and they're like, wait, hold on a second. I'm actually really angry about the idea of white women having sex with black men. And then it fucks up the joke because they get angry in the middle of it, you know? It's like misogynistic jokes. Have you ever listened to sexist jokes from people who actually hate women? They're not jokes. Therefore, they're not funny. They're literally just, I am sexually insecure. Why won't they have sex with me? Where's the joke? That you just hate women. You're not doing any comedy here. There's no like, so like you can be sexist and funny. I do it all the time, but not if you actually hate women, because then the comedy isn't the important part of the message that you're trying to put forward. And likewise, I think that a lot of George Carlin's appeal is the fact that if you view it in retrospect, if you view it now, from our perspective, obviously George Carlin was progressive. You'd have to be an idiot or delusional to think otherwise. But at the time he was doing that and saying that, he wasn't being caught in the rigmarole of having to be like churned through this culture war. Modern day George Carlin would make a comment on like Gaza or Israel that would then lead to him getting called anti-Semitic a bunch, and he would tweet out like, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just really critical of our relationship to the fascists in, you know, in Israel. And then he would be like, he'd do like Mehdi Hassan stuff. He'd be like having to defend it. You can't be this aloof comedian who touches on subjects of public interest, because thanks to social media and how partisan everyone is these days, you then have to do like this follow through. This is what happened to, what's the guy's name? He did the jerking off and he's redheaded. Come on, you know what I mean. What's his name? Louis C.K. This is what happened to Louis C.K. Louis C.K. was funny. I'm not talking about his moral character like as an individual. I'm saying he was funny up until he integrated into the environment where you are where you are like contributing your thoughts on stuff outside of just the stand-up routines. Now you're in the Twitter gauntlet. Now you're like doing the like the outside interviews and the TV show and the such and such, right? And then you start getting pulled into the culture war, and it meant that he had to like fall on one side or another of the fence. And it's like, are my creepy self-defacing jokes about me being weird about women actually a joke, or do I really feel that way? And clearly he was like, yeah, I really feel that way. Now I'm going to jerk off in front of a woman who's on set or something, you know? You get put in the category, and it really hampers the comedy. Nothing is less funny than having to clarify your joke to people who are on your side but want to like make sure. Trust me, I know. You're in the middle of a phenomenal bit that's edgy but very clearly progressive or left-leaning or something, and you're killing it. And then people in chat are like, "Wait, does he really not think that?" I'm like, "No! Don't twist my comedic genius. I'm on a roll. Fuck you." But you have to say something, because otherwise you can ignore it. But if you ignore it too much, people get, you know, they get weird with it. Anyway, this is the problem with modern stand-up. It's not the comedians. It's the environment we're in just makes it really difficult to do witty observational comedy with a political bent that doesn't immediately lead to you getting like shoved into categories and placed in environments where you have to contextualize and clarify. No one can ever argue George Carlin and Bill Hicks weren't leftists. Yeah, but that's the difference. Today, we say that. Back then, there were tons of people watching Carlin and Hicks who were not thinking, "Oh, this is my favorite left-leaning, but I love my leftist, progressive, pro-trans, pro-Palestinian rights stand-up comedians, George Carlin and Bill Hicks." You know, there were people who were thinking that way, but a lot of people were just thinking, "Oh man, these guys tell it like it is." Not everything had been, subsumed by political association. It was better. It was better. I would love to, as somebody who, when he's not feeling very good about covering politics, still enjoys comedy as like a concept, as a medium of communication quite a bit. Sometimes it really makes me wish that you could just like not deal with the political veneer for a bit and you could just rail off pure comedy. It's not possible. It's never been possible, but it's nice to think about. It's kind of like it's how I've thought about, like, you know, Avatar: The Last Airbender, obviously a progressive show. The show is like very inclusive when it comes to, and respectful when it comes to like cultural and religious depictions through allegory. Literally the first episode has like an anti-sexist spiel from Katara to, you know, like we all remember this, right? But at the time, none of us thought that way when we watched it, right? The people who made the show were thinking that. The show was made by people who were thinking, "I'm a feminist, I want these messages in there, I'm like, you know, respectful of these cultures, of the Inuit, of the Japanese, of the Chinese, of the Tibetans, you know, I want to, like, I'm thinking about this as I write this wonderful story." But when we consumed it, we were young, we didn't know. And there were adults who consumed it back then in like 2005 or whenever it came out, whenever it first aired. There were adults who watched it at that time. Maybe your parents watched it with you when you were young, who were also not thinking, "Oh wow, what a great like culturally inclusive feminist message for children." They were just thinking like, "Oh yeah, it's a good show," which it really, really is. If Avatar: The Last Airbender came out today, they'd be calling it woke. Exact same show, widen the aspect ratio, make it 16:9. If it came out today, they would call it woke. They would call it woke. They would complain about, like, knowing how the environment is online right now, they would complain that Toph is ugly or something. And they would say, like, "Why does she have to be blind? Blind warrior? That's unrealistic. You still need eyes to fight. Being able to see through the ground doesn't mean that you can," like, they would do that bit. And they would say, like, Aang is annoying and Katara is a feminazi, and so you know exactly what they would say. It's been ruined. The show hasn't been ruined, but the cultural context of how the show was originally presented to people has been ruined. That can't happen again. It sucks. That does bug me. That does really bug me. Legend of Korra literally exists. Legend of Korra isn't Avatar: The Last Airbender. Also, Legend of Korra started coming out before, like, the modern culture war took off to the extent that it has now. But, I don't know if you remember, it also was called woke, basically. Woke wasn't the word they used, but yeah, they did the same thing. Korra doesn't suck. It just sucks compared to The Last Airbender. And that's not exactly a fair comparison. You know, put anything up against that. They literally argued, "Why does Korra do everything better than Aang?" Me when I haven't watched either show. Are you fucking kidding me? Aang after training for 1 year, like literally God on Earth. Korra after training for a decade with a team of like top advisors, trainers, and a secret society of warriors to protect her, can do like boxing punches that put her about on par with like the average athlete. Okay. Are you saying Korra is Chud Media? I'm saying that every second that passes, we march towards our deaths, and there's nothing we can do about it. Except drink water, eat complex carbohydrates, get your fiber in, make sure to get at least 20 minutes of light exercise every day, even if it's just a light walk. You can put off the inevitable. And you can always rewatch the old good stuff, you know? It's just the cultural context in which it existed just isn't around anymore. And that's more like of a detriment, I think, to other people than to me. It's not like I dislike Avatar now. I just feel bad that there are so many amazing things out there that can't exist now because the environment is antagonistic towards it. Did you watch Hazbin Hotel? I don't feel comfortable talking about Hazbin Hotel in a conversation about Avatar: The Last Airbender. I feel like that's disrespectful to the GOAT. No hate, just, you know.